I think we're good to go. Thank you so much for joining me. My name is Jason Levine, and back by popular demand. You thought the How to Make Great Video series was over last week. In fact, it was, but we've got a special bonus episode today, and we're going to be talking about, specifically, we're going to cover a couple things that we showcased over the last 6 weeks, but really about optimizing your video content and delivery for social networks. I'm going to show you a couple things that we didn't get to do. Reframing for square, reframing for vertical, or you've shot vertically and you're trying to create sequences and export for things like Snapchat stories. I'm going to go through a lot of that. Also, I'm going to start by showcasing to you a panel that we sneaked called the Social Publishing Panel. I'm going to show this to you, and then I'm going to throw up a URL. Throw up a URL? Interesting choice of words there. I'm going to display a URL because we are actively seeking people to join the beta for the Social Publishing Panel. So you'll have a couple of URLs there. You can check it out and see if this is something you might want to do. Super cool, and definitely something that I think you'll find really awesome, especially if some of you are going to VidCon and thinking about, publishing and scheduling and stuff like that. Okay, so as mentioned, I'm going to skip around quite a bit. This isn't in any particular order, but we're going to start with the Social Publishing Panel. If you haven't heard about this, you can actually check it out. You can check out videos last year of me showing this at Adobe Max. We've been working on it. We're still working on it. We're still soliciting, again, feedback. We want to know what you guys think. So this is why I'm going to be putting this out today. So let's get to it, shall we? So let's start in Premiere. And let's talk about publishing our content to the various social networks. So first of all, you can already do this today in Premiere Pro. I will show this towards the middle, probably about 30 minutes from now, of how you do this today. If you got Premiere today, you downloaded CC today, I'll show you how to do that. But there's a new way that we're developing. Again, this is the Social Publishing Panel beta that we'd like to invite some of you to. And when you think about publishing to social networks, one of the first things you have to keep in mind is that much like a lot of things in the world, there aren't a lot of, well, nothing is the same across all the various networks, right? In other words, or platforms, I should say. The frame size, the actual attributes of the content that they want, square versus widescreen 16:9 versus vertical 9:16 versus you can even do sort of portrait style video. It's all a little bit different. It can all be a little bit confusing. And if you're new to video, getting into video, and this was part of the reason for starting this 6-week series, I've got this weird hair that's doing its own thing right here. It can be intimidating. It can probably stop you from using an application because you make a video, you edit. The editing part isn't so hard. Just to sort of cut things and put things in sequence. All right. To tell a story, you can learn that craft and get better over time. Just basic cutting is easy. But when you go to the export menu, and just to kind of showcase this for a moment here. Again, if you're new and you've never done this, and you're not a sort of tech nerd in terms of codecs and, formats and all this kind of stuff, you might know to choose something like H.264, which is the standard for deploying your content to all of your favorite social platforms. But then you go in there and you're like, all right, now what? You've got all this sort of gray space and all these things. Oh, well, I'll choose a preset. Oh my gosh. And there's just presets and presets and presets. Now, like I've mentioned before, like I'll show you later, we've done a good job of giving you presets specific to a lot of those networks in any case. So you can see here down below, we've got a whole slew of them for YouTube, for Vimeo, for Twitter, for Facebook. Okay, so they're there, but it's not quite so easy to get into right away. All right. So this is part of what the Social Publishing Panel tries to address. On top of that, it's going to add some additional features that you, the users who create a lot of video content, often create a lot of video content in advance. And if you're like a social maverick out there and you're doing stuff all the time, chances are you're probably cutting a lot of videos, you're probably editing a lot of videos, and then ultimately you want to be able to schedule them out so they automatically publish at specific periods of time, which you have to do manually with those associated uploads to those social networks, where I'm going to show you now how inside the SPP, you'll be able to do this kind of all in one step and even track metrics. That's right, be able to sort of track the performance of your content. So here I have a whole bunch of videos. This is from this musical analog documentary about synthesizers and things that I've been cutting. And let's say that I want to, oh, there's my Galaxian video game here. And let's say that I want to publish this content, okay? So when you download, should you become part of the beta, and again, I'll pull up this URL. In fact, here, I'll save it to the end. See if you want to do it first. You'll be able to find this panel under extensions, window extensions, social publishing. Incidentally, this is where you'll also find additional third-party panels like ones from Pond 5. Here's one from our friends at Audio Network for getting fantastic production music for your videos for social, in fact. Great use of that kind of music. All right. And that studio panel, my friends who built this, which is a lot of overlays and cool mats and things like that. All right. So let's go into the social publishing panel. Now, first and foremost, when you do that, what you'll see is that right away you've got sort of YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook right in front of you with the familiar icons to know, this is where they're going to go. Now, if you're not logged into one of those, and I just left the Facebook one here unlogged in for the moment, you'll have a login authentication screen. You'll go ahead and do that. And once you're logged in, it'll take the associated name of whatever that account is or fan page or whatnot, and you'll see it inside the panel here. Okay. Now, without even doing anything, remember I just talked about going into that preset menu and having to kind of know H.264 is the format for uploading video. And then all the frame size considerations. Case in point, Instagram, for instance, is one of those where and I'll talk more about this when I talk about creating sequences because we don't have a direct publish to Instagram just yet. It wants a 1080 wide, not 1920 wide, a 1080 wide maximum frame size. So ultimately, you want to be uploading something that's 1080 pixels wide. That's the largest size they're going to store. How would you know that? YouTube, of course, you've got 4K, you have HD, you have 720p HD, you've even got standard definition. Facebook wants 720p, which is 1280 by 720. All kind of different things. What if you don't know? Well, we make this easier for you by right at the top showcasing to you the export settings for those associated networks, for those associated platforms. This is what they want. These are what the frame sizes are. You just need to choose the one that you want to export. Made simple. Now, if you're doing some kind of a campaign, which of course you can do on YouTube, you can see you can add a campaign. So if I wanted to say, take this video and add it to my campaign, I have this one here called Music is the Magic. I can do that. All right. And then the save as file. This is just telling you where it's going to actually save the file to on disk. Ultimately, we're uploading it to YouTube. But what's the name of it? Where do we want it to go? So again, really easy. May seem stupid, but no, this is one of those things. Where is it going? I'm sure many of you have done that. You're in Photoshop, After Effects, Premiere, wherever. You kind of file save. You don't even necessarily pay attention to where the default sequences or projects get created. Premiere will create the default project on the Mac inside of like this Adobe folder, inside of Documents. That's not where you want it, right? It's just a default because it has to put it somewhere. So this allows you to choose that front and center very easily. Okay, location. Where's it going to go? So I have a channel. This is a test channel of mine. It is public, but it doesn't have any. It's not one that I use regularly. Called Jace's Places. This was for my travelogue series. And then playlists. Where do I want this to go? It's going to go to the Jace's Places channel, but then I've got a whole series of different playlists that I can place it to. So because this one is more about music and this documentary, I'm going to put it in the behind the scenes playlist. Scroll down and we go to our publishing settings. So first we can give it a title. And we'll call this The Moog Rogue. Oops, not the Moog. The Moog Rogue and its mod wheels. The mod wheels are these things here. Pitch bender and the modulation wheel. All right. So, and I can put a quick description here. A brief piece of B-roll and beauty shot of the Moog Rogue analog synth. Okay. Privacy settings, public, private, unlisted. All right, let's go ahead and make it public. Category, somehow at new music. I'll go ahead and keep it at music. And then tags. Now, this is one of those things which, again, I'll talk about later too. Tagging is one of those things that is kind of a drag. You need to think intelligently about tagging because, of course, this is how people will ultimately find your video outside of just whatever you have in the title. The title matters too for search. But you got to think about the way people are going to search on things. So, if I want people to actively try and find this, I can't just say, Moog Rogue and its mod wheels. No. Few, if any, will ever search on that. Maybe they'll search on Moog. Maybe they'll search on synthesizer. Maybe they'll search on analog or vintage or synthesis or whatever. That's how you have to think. So you can create a series of tags here. Moog, Rogue, and I'll use the ones I just said. Analog, vintage, keyboard, instrument, synth. You get the idea. And you can add all these tags in here. Now, what's cool about the social publishing panel and what's different about this is two things. One, you'll see here that you have the ability to save a group of tags. But more importantly, and something that we emphasized when we showcased this last November at Adobe Max, is that you also, the panel itself, and I'll show you this in a moment, will start to see what tags are obviously resonating and working, and then make suggestions on tags based on your content. Now, outside of that, you'll see that also right here, and this is unique to this panel, is that you can choose your thumbnail. Very useful. Now, this shot, I don't think there's a lot of movement in here, but if you click on the Choose button, this will allow you to scrub through your video. And you can see I'm actually doing a little focus pulling on here. So now, actually, that's even nicer because now you can see the title a little bit better here. So I'll say use this frame, and it updates the frame down below. You choose where you want it to go. And incidentally, you can also decide, hey, you know what? I want the same video to go to all three places. And you can choose multiple social networks to publish to simultaneously. Now, when you publish, you've got a couple of different options. Publish later, publish now. When you choose publish later, what this will allow you to do, of course, is to schedule the deployment, the publishing of your video. This is so nice because, again, as many of us work and as many of us create content for various platforms, maybe you want to first give people a taste of your video on YouTube. But by midday, you want to share it on Facebook. And then in the evening, you want to share it on Twitter. Or maybe you want to share this same piece of content multiple times. Here's how you can do that. All right? Choose your date, your time zone, and you schedule. Very easy. And when you schedule your content, and you can see here, you've got your publish settings for Twitter. Naturally, of course, you have the tweet. So there's no description for this. It's the tweet. And you'll see if I start typing in here, it gives you the 140 count so you don't go over. All right. When you go into the scheduling tab, though, this is where it gets really cool because as you can see, right now, I've got 7 videos scheduled. I'll get rid of my camera for a second here. All right. So you can see I've got one, the Galaxian player. It's going to Jace's Places. That's going to happen today at 10:30 Pacific. I've got another one on my Casio VL1, the focus pull. All right. I can edit all of these. So if I want to change the time, got my Galaxian opener, the original Rogue one, the Moog mono synth. Okay. So you can see, oh, and then down here, you can see I've got another one testing out some new publishing. Now this I actually published yesterday. This one's going to Twitter today at 1 p.m. Okay. So you've got a nice sort of display of the schedule of all the content that you're laying out. Now, outside of that, of course, is measurement. And it wouldn't be 2017 if we weren't all about that bass. I mean, all about them stats. That was a lame joke. Now, again, because this is a channel that is public but otherwise not shared or used, you can see my amazing stats here. Oh, wait, there are some. Okay. Wow. Oh, there were a lot on Twitter, apparently. Okay. That's awesome. In fact, so you remember I was just telling you, wow, that's cool. Hey, Bronwyn. Wow, cool. So I just said that one, testing out some new publishing workflows. So I published this yesterday at noon. Okay. And you can see the engagement. You can see the views. This is pretty cool. Wow, I didn't even know that. Okay. So pretty neat. And you get this. And by the way, you notice that when we went to the measurement tab, You got the little kind of cycling circle there. Cycling circle. How come? Well, because it's having to ping, obviously, to grab those stats, and that'll refresh accordingly. Now, as you can see, because I actually published that Twitter content to my Twitter page, my actual Beetlejuice Twitter, it actually had a lot of visibility. Whereas these two videos here, both of which went to this kind of unseen, non-used YouTube, they didn't I didn't even view them myself. So, but the idea here is that you're actually going to get updates here to showcase to you what's being seen, what's working based on the time that you actually published them. And you've got lots of different kind of sorting and viewing options here. You'll see that you can show all accounts, all YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, all videos, all campaigns. A couple nice sorting options by time, by views, by likes, comments, shares, retweets. Again, some applicable to other networks over others. And then how it's displayed here, week, month, year, etc. Watch time, again, this is going to focus specifically on YouTube, right? So YouTube is and perhaps I imagine at some point we would introduce that for Facebook potentially, because they also log watch time and engagement. Again, it's not out yet. This is the kind of stuff we want to hear from you. So you've just got a lot of cool options here, and this is kind of a new way, the next phase of social publishing. So what if you want to actually be a part of this? What if you want to take advantage and get in the game? Well, go to the top URL that you see there, adobe.ly/spp-beta. This is where you can sign up to potentially join the beta program for the social publishing panel. If you want to see the original blog post that talked about what this is and what it's all about, adobe.com/go/social publishing will get you there. So that is the social publishing panel. Okay. So now let's shift gears. We're going to come back to destination publishing. Let's actually talk about creating content for various social networks. And we'll focus maybe a little bit here on Instagram and Snapchat. And I call those two out specifically because, again, there are a lot of criteria that are sort of necessary to understand for creating content for those mediums. Now, in the case of Instagram, as you well know, you have actually a lot of choices in terms of the flavor, size, shape of your video, the standard being kind of square. Now, what's interesting to note is that how it's displayed on Instagram, regardless of the upload, is 600 pixels wide. So when you're viewing it on your phone or what have you, it's 600 pixels wide. Now, you can upload video content as wide as 1080. The height doesn't actually matter, according to several different spec blogs that I've seen. I can't seem to find total definitive information about this. So in terms of vertical, it could be 1080 by 1920. It could be 1080 by 2000, I suppose. At the end of the day, they'll store a 1080 version, but what is displayed is still going to be 600 pixels wide, okay? So you've got square, you've got vertical for stories on Instagram, which are not unlike Snapchat stories. And then you have just standard widescreen 16:9. Okay, so even if you're working in 1920 1080, at the end of the day, they're going to reconfigure that down to 600 wide and potentially store a 1080 wide version. So one of the things that I recommend doing, now you can, if you're going to be working in just sort of standard HD or even 4K, in theory, there's no reason you can't just create a sequence in the standard 1920 1080 and then on export, create a preset that is 1080 wide by, what is that? 1080 by, is it 308 or something like that? Whatever the equivalent is. You can reconfigure that easily enough, and I'll show you that. However, and this was something that I learned from speaking with some people at Snapchat, and this is something which people who work in film, especially today, and if you saw any of our recent presenters from NAB, Vashi Nedemansky being one of them. Now, he shot this recent recent film, 6 Below, not a documentary, recent film called 6 Below. It was the first native shot in 6K, edited in 6K. There was no 6K, but you know we're editing in 1080 so we can reframe and recompose and all that. No. However, For social publishing, it is not uncommon to shoot, say, 4K on your iPhone or on your Samsung device or what have you, but ultimately edit in a 1080 timeline or a 1920 1080 timeline, and then export to whatever it needs to be. By doing so, right, by having larger footage and working in a smaller sequence, it lets you reframe, recompose, and get a little creative, okay? So in terms of Instagram, you've got a lot of different options here. Now, one thing you might want to do to make it easier for yourself is just to make some sequence templates that you can kind of roll your footage into. Because if you're wanting to deliver square video, which quite honestly, when I'm looking at Instagram, I don't love square video, but it fills the frame there, so to speak. It kind of just looks the best. You know, the problem is with Instagram, even if you tilt your device, it doesn't fill the screen. So you're kind of limited if you're doing 16:9 video there. It's going to show it. It'll look nice wide, but it's not going to get bigger. So you can make presets. How do we do that? Inside of Premiere Pro, if we go to the new item icon down here at the bottom, sequence, you can't see that either, sorry. I'll zoom in for you. All right. New item sequence. Let's go in here. Now, you're going to find dozens of presets in here. Again, a lot of recently added ones for VR, DSLR, and a lot of your standard flavors. In fact, to be honest, now that a lot of the DSLRs and mirrorless cameras are shooting 4K, we really need to update these as well. And you'll see down below that I've already created a bunch of presets for Instagram and Snapchat. All right. And if you look at the names here, you'll see I've got Instagram 1080 square for iPhone. So this is a 1080 by 1080. So 1080 wide, 1080 high for iPhone. Now, why did I call it that? So it's really for using DSLR footage, it's for using iPhone footage at 30 frames per second. Okay, so your iPhone video is captured at 30 frames per second. Most of your DSLRs, if you're shooting with that, will have different frame rates options: 2997, 23976, 25. Some will do 60, some will do 120. You get the idea. So this is a 1080 by 1080. You can see the attributes here. 30 frames per second, square pixels. That's what you want for the pixel aspect ratio. Progressive scan, sample rate of 48K. Now, just to talk about that real briefly, because this is a learning stream. A lot of the things that I've seen regarding specs for Instagram say that they actually want your video's audio delivered at 44,100 hertz, not 48K. That's interesting because that 44.1 is actually the audio standard for iTunes, Apple Music, Spotify, Google Play. All the audio that we hear is typically, when it's just audio, is 44.1. Audio with video is typically 48. I've seen a bunch of blogs that say Instagram wants 44. Okay, you can do that on export. You don't have to do it in the sequence. If you want to modify or make your own sequence, I'm going to show you that right now. Similarly, you'll see I have an Instagram 1080 square. It's the same as the previous one. This one just creates a square sequence at Instagram's max width, 1080. Audio remains 48K, but the frame rate is 23976, meaning that I kept the frame rate of my DSLR footage. So this is a square sequence meant for 23976 DSLR, okay? And again, you can see the attributes down here. It's still square. The frame size is the same. Everything else is the same but the frame rate. Now, here's a vertical version, again, for Instagram stories, 1080, 1920 at 30, all right? And then I did a wide one as well. So this creates a widescreen sequence for Instagram, 1080 by 608 with my DSLR frame rate of 23976. Now, again, the point of doing that is that since I'm shooting 1920, working in a 1080 by 608 sequence is just going to give me more freedom to kind of recompose, move things around without having to even scale up. If anything, I'll probably have to scale stuff down. And if you were shooting 4K and editing in 1080 by 608, you're going to have even more recomposing, reframing options. So it's just a matter of how you like to work, how comfortable you feel. It's something to get used to. And as I mentioned, a lot of films today, a lot of things that are being done, that's where we're shooting in 8K. We're not editing in 8K. I mean, maybe some are now. I imagine that's fairly painful. But who cares? You can't even deliver it in 8K. So maybe you're delivering in 4K or 2K. So you work in a 2K sequence, and now you've got all this composition capability behind you. Amazing, right? Okay. Now, how do we modify? How do we create these presets? Okay, well, you can take any one of these here. I actually started with the DSLR ones because that's what I work with most frequently. And let's just take like a 1080p 30, which would be standard on sort of your iPhone and a lot of your devices. Let's go up to settings here. And here's where you can basically modify and create the sequence preset that you want to work with. So in this case, you can choose your time base, your time code here. So we can do 2997, we can do 30, 60, whatever. Let's just say, again, if I'm working with my DSLR, I might make it 23976, maybe a straight 24, 25 if you're over in Europe and that's what you that's what you work with. Whatever it is, this is where you change that. So let's just say, let's make it 25 for the heck of it, okay? Frame size. Okay, so once again, 1920, 1080. Now, if you're doing it for Instagram, as I mentioned, you want to go square, you can type in 1080 by 1080, okay? Or if you're trying to create something for Facebook, now we have this preset already, but you could do a 1280, 720, which maintains that same 16:9. We've already got presets for that. If you're wanting to do the vertical for both Snapchat or Instagram, 1080 by 1920. Or similarly, you could do 2160 by 3840 if you were doing a 4K vertical. Now, again, having talked to a lot of people who create vertical Snapchat stories, especially now, most of the content is typically shot or created in 4K, but they're edited down into a 1080 sequence. And in this case, rather, a 1920, well, a 1080 by 1920 sequence. The reason being is that, especially for vertical, you want to take advantage of those reframing capabilities, of sort of reconfiguring, because if you've watched any of those stories, and I'll pull up some examples in a moment, it's very carefully done. There's a lot of sort of dividing up the frame. You have to think about it in a different way. You have to shoot kind of for vertical. You have to shoot with, we're not just trying to sort of reformat something that was vertical into a widescreen. You see that sometimes. No, I'm actually talking about creating it vertically. So you don't typically, I haven't talked to too many people who are building 4K vertical sequences, but this is how you would do it. Your pixel aspect ratio for all of these will be square. Fields, again, most of your cameras, I can't imagine most are working interlaced. Certainly your social networks don't want that. Keep that progressive scan. And again, your display format is just what you see inside of Premiere. Your sample rate, again, you can modify this here. Probably okay just to keep it at 48K. Unless, of course, your device is capturing at 44, then it's fine to just modify it to 44, okay? I believe actually the iPhone does a lot of that. Video previews. Now, this is something if you want sort of to be able to pre-render a lot of your footage in the timeline. This is a slightly more advanced user case here. If you're using a lot of effects and things and performance starts to slow down a bit, you can use video previews. Again, you can choose the frame size. In this case, it's keeping it vertical here based on the ratio that we've got above. You can leave it in composite and linear color. That's the default here. And then you're simply going to click on Save Preset. Okay? And I can call this one Snap UHD 25 FPS, just because that's what we did. Okay? This is for authoring native 4K vertical videos at 25 FPS. Did I leave it 48 or 44? 48K. Okay. Click OK. And now inside of your sequence presets, you will see momentarily, there it is right there. Now, again, as I mentioned, what am I generally going to use if I'm building something for Snapchat? This one right here. This will create a 9:16 HD sequence, 1080 by 1920 at 30, standard for mine, okay? And if I want to use that, I can give it a name, new snap story, click OK, and now we've got a blank sort of template to work from here, okay? And again, if I wanted to create another blank one for Instagram Square with my DSLR, let's choose this one up at the top here, and we're going to actually do this. Instagram's max width 1080, 48K, 23976. Okay. And now I've got a square one like that. All right. So now that we've got these kind of blank canvases, how do we work efficiently? Okay. How do we do this? All right. So let's just start with the Instagram one. Now, as I mentioned, all of the video content that you see here, this was all shot with a Nikon D800. This is all 1920, 1080. So naturally, it's larger, it's wider than this frame allows. So here's an example of where we're going to just use some basic scaling and or reframing. Now again, when you start changing sort of the view of how this will be displayed, you can start to get a bit more creative with this. Square can be challenging because you really gotta think about it. How do I want it to appear? You know, what's in the frame that's going to work? Some of these shots, just looking at them, they weren't shot intended to be square. So, you know, some of these it's just not going to look very good. All right. Now this one here, this is all handheld stuff. This one might actually work. So let's go ahead and drag this first video from the project panel here into the sequence. Now, one of the nice things in Premiere is that it's going to tell you, hey, this clip doesn't match the sequence settings. Do you want to change it to match or keep the existing? No, I want to keep it square, right? So when I choose keep existing settings, now you're seeing what I was talking about. So again, it's because this is 1080 all around, the width is fine, but of course the height is different. So here's where you can do a couple of different things, all right? Now, there's all sorts of schools of thought on, well, don't scale that up, always scale down. Mostly true. How is this being viewed on a phone? Ultimately, rescale down again to 600 pixels. If your shot is good, not noisy, in focus, you can scale this up and it's still going to look pretty darn good. And once you get it down to this, you have to consider, where's it going? Do people care if there's some slight pixelization, pixeling? If they can even see it. I mean, you really have to think critically. And of course, you have to look at it here, right? So let's just say I wanted to fill the entire frame. Well, if we go to Effects Controls, and by the way, if you don't see these tabs, you can find all of these under the Window menu in Mac or PC. So I happen to be in the editing workspace, but I modify my workspaces all the time. So yours may look a little bit different. We can just scale this up to fill the frame, all right? And even looking at this static frame right here, all right, and if I just scrub through this, I mean, again, I had nice focus. I was doing some focus pulls right here. Let's play this back real briefly. All right. Now I've got it playing at 1/4 res, so when I stop, you see it sharpens up. By the way, your viewable resolution on screen, this is called fractional playback. Can you see that here? This is what you choose. So we can play it at full quality. There's no effects or anything. It should be just fine. There you go. Yeah, playing smoothly. Looks great. Does it look any noisier? Does it look bad? We just scaled this up how much? It's 187%. Looks fine. Doesn't look any worse for the wear. It's not a great shot. It's not composed nicely. So this is where, again, you might say, okay, yeah, I need to bring it, readjust how it's aligned in the frame here. Or maybe, you know, maybe you'll do some kind of movement. So I could set a position keyframe. So let's say, here, we'll start it right about here, or when it does that focus pull. So something from here, I'll set a keyframe, and then, I mean, I'm kind of moving. It's moving as I'm doing this. Let's just assume I move it over ever so slightly. All right. So you can keyframe some movement here. This would probably be a good candidate for using a little bit of warp stabilizer. The point is, position, scale, rotation, anchor point, all of these things are contained under the motion options in Effects Controls simply by selecting the clip. You drag a clip into a sequence, that's where you're going to find that stuff, okay? Very simple. Let's go ahead and reset these, and we'll reset the scale again, okay? So that would be kind of filling the frame. Now, you don't see this as often in Instagram, but I've started seeing some of this stuff where actually I'm seeing people kind of leverage sort of a 2-up display, which is sort of cool. 2 different angles if you will, of the same content. So let me go ahead and grab another scene of this. Again, all this stuff here is handheld. Some of it's so shaky and crummy. All right, you're seeing real raw content here. All right, so let's take this clip. All right, select this one here, zoom in a bit, and once again I'm going to modify the position so I can have this one sort of displayed at the bottom. Now we can play around with this so that they're even in this case. They're not exactly even here, so let me do this. I kind of like the little divider right there. But, you know, this is how you can have kind of two views moving simultaneously and kind of take advantage of working in this square format or working in a vertical format, right? So reframing, recomposing, rescaling, shooting at 4K, editing in a 1080 timeline. Now, what about that? Let me just show you that real briefly. So this is Instagram wide. So this is the 1080 by 608. So this here is a different experience now because this is, the sequence is smaller, the footage fills the frame, but it's larger. So again, you've got more recomposing, reformatting, reframing capabilities. So now when we look at this footage at 100%, it's completely filling the frame. If we scale it down though, you can see we've got all this other stuff that's still there. And this is where we could do some nice, you know, push and pull movement. You know, you can keyframe all of that. Again, even if you keep it kind of at this scale level, let's do like a 75%. If you wanted to do some kind of actual left-right motion panning around, you know, this looks fairly cheesy when it's done linearly like that. The idea is that you have more abilities to kind of reframe inside of that 1080 wide. And this is what I would highly recommend if you're going to publish to Instagram. Do it, create it inside of a 1080 sequence. It'll give you a lot more sort of creative looks at how to do these things. And you can kind of make something that's even a bit more unique as opposed to just working in a 1920 1080 timeline and then having to export it at 1080 by 608. So that's a little bit on Instagram, Square, landscape. Let's talk though specifically Snapchat. Now, Snapchat really has kind of changed the world view on working with vertical video. And I mentioned we got VidCon coming up. You're going to have a lot of people there who are going to be Snapchatting and creating stories. And if you've never watched a Snapchat story, it's really interesting because it completely changed the way that I even envisioned experiencing things vertically. Ultimately, we consume stuff vertically anyway. It's not, you know, it used to be, you know, your parents shooting a video of the dog in the pool and they did it, you know, they're shooting it like this and you get it and they post it to YouTube and it's, you know, pillar box on the sides and barf, you know, it's awful. But that's because they were seeing vertical in a widescreen frame. Yeah, that doesn't look good. So that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about creating vertical for the purpose of being displayed on our vertical devices, all right? Now, if you haven't looked at stories, I actually went through a couple of Instagram stories. Now, these, I've just blurred them out. These were from, I think, an ET, one of the E! Entertainment Tonight channels or something like that, or maybe from E! News. Again, I blurred it out so you don't really see anything specific here. But some common things that you see in Snapchat stories where they'll take the same, you can see, 16:9 video and kind of do a 3-up display with text that animates along the bottom. Or they'll take one, say, 16:9 video and display that in the upper third of the vertical frame and then do a zoom, okay, to the same exact frame, the same exact point in time, I mean, and display that vertically filling 2/3 of the frame. So they really just scaled it up, placing one on top of the other. One occupies 1/3, the other occupies 2/3. Okay? Or sometimes you see, you know, again, kind of framed square. So this is kind of a 2-up even display here, where you've got two people displayed on the top, and then it's the same shot zoomed in to a character on the right here. Okay? Or, whoops, not that. You've got just a 3-up display of the same footage. Okay, the same footage shown 3 times. So what I wanted to show you here was this was just a really quick timeline that I threw together, just kind of showcasing some of the things that you can do and then sort of adding some of those animated text elements for your Snapchat vertical video or your Instagram stories. So take a quick look at this. Now this also leverages our new Essential Graphics panel. Now by the way, one of the things I wanted to talk about too with regard to working vertically is that you can also kind of change how your video is displayed. Now the way that I've got this right now, let me see, did I have it in the color workspace before? You know, you want to take advantage of the real estate you have. So, you know, you can really, you know, reconfigure the interface here so that you just have a better view or a more logical view of everything on screen. You know, kind of fill the screen here. So I do this stuff a lot. All right, so let's play this back and take a look at this amazing piece that I created here. Oh, and here, let me just make sure, I'm just going to mute this. All right. Okay, so let's go ahead and play this back. All right. Oh, and here, I'm going to put this to half speed because I've got a lot of grading on here, and or 1/2 playback resolution because I got a lot of grading, and I've got some time remapping, and I've also got real-time animated essential graphics, motion graphics templates. Okay, so take a quick look here. So one of the keys, of course, is that, I'm just going to scrub through this first bit, is that we've got 3 separate videos playing, each occupying a third of the frame, just as you saw in one of those Instagram story Snapchat story examples that I just showed you. You've got text animating and blurring on, okay, across those. You've also got a little logo branding going on here. Now, this can be added on export, which I'm going to show you in less than 10 minutes, because we're almost up at the hour here, or you can do this inside of the Essential Graphics panel. When it transitions to the next series of clips, we used a little flash to white transition. Now, call it cheesy, but I just watched a whole bunch of stories, and when they're transitioning, they've got a lot of either like light leak style, which you could also implement, or just the classic flash to white, okay? Okay. Now, once again, here's another example where we have a single video that was shot, but here it's filling the entire frame, and it's got its own centered text, logo branding in the bottom, transition to another, and here again, we've got sort of 2 cameras on the same content, the same piece shot similarly, where we've got some text, we've got a branded logo, and we're occupying, you know, 50% of that vertical frame with 2 different shots, okay? And then, of course, you can do a fade to black or whatever else you want to do. All right? So how do we create these things? Well, let me go ahead and break this down for you by first going into the graphics tab up here. And once again, this will pull up the Essential Graphics panel. So how do we do all this? How did I do this? So I'm going to show you real quickly. So if you go into the graphics workspace here in Premiere Pro, this will pull up the Essential Graphics panel. Now, these 3 text layers that you see here are just that, layers of text typed directly onto the content using the new type tools in Premiere Pro. If you don't have the type tool yet, you have not updated to the latest Premiere Pro CC 2017, the first edition of which was released in April. So you'll see that we've got not only a type tool, but also a vertical type tool here. And to type text, it is simple as choosing that type tool, clicking right inside the program monitor. So you're no longer working in that sort of modal dialogue and, you know, typing right there, right on there. And as you do that, you'll see that you're actually creating a little layer stack here inside of Essential Graphics. You're actually building up layers. So I could take that text, and right underneath I have align and transform. So I could do, I don't want to center it vertically, but I do want to center it horizontally, right? This is text, so it falls right below right there. So you've got some alignment and transform controls, position, you know, rotation, opacity controls right here. If you've created master styles, again, that you can apply a look to all of your text across multiple layers. The actual font, which if your text is selected, and if you use a wheel mouse, or in my case, a magic mouse, I'm just gesturing to change the font, and it changes it kind of in real time, very nicely, very easily, so you can see what works. All right. Phosphate. Somebody doesn't like that for certain. All right. Easy to change. From here, you also have the ability to create shapes or import images or video from a file. Now, you only see rectangle and ellipse. However, you'll also notice down here that we also have the pen tool. So you can draw your shapes, freeform shapes, with the pen tool as well. So you're not just limited to those. And as mentioned, how did I get this little logo in here? Well, that happens to be on a different graphics layer, but that is in fact just a ping file, right? How do I know it's a ping file? Well, it is because it's in the title. But again, I can rescale. I can rescale this. I can adjust the position of this. It's just another layer from the Essential Graphics panel. Okay. So let's go back to this one here. Let's turn off our this is text. Again, it's a layer stack, so you can control how all of those function inside of the panels here. Now, what about animation? Again, as we saw, I kind of animate these things on opacity, and then there's some directional blur applied. Well, with your text layer selected, let's just start with the up at the top here. Once again, if we leverage the effects controls panel, let's look over to the left here. The text, right? You see you've got all your source text options. This is going to show you basically everything that you have in Essential Graphics. But if you twirl that up and focus on transform, this is all the same things I was just talking about a moment ago, where you have scale, position, rotation, opacity, and you can see that I keyframed the opacity here from 0 to 100, okay? Now, it also has some directional blur. You'll find that if I twirl all the rest of these up, you'll find that here. Okay, if I turned off that blur, now you're just seeing the opacity change. And you just pay attention here, and you can see, if you look at the keyframes, right, you can see that we go from 0 to 100, 0 to 100. So here's just the text kind of flying in with opacity shifts across all of those text layers. Here it is with the directional blur keyframed. And the only thing that I modified was the blur length, right? So it starts out at 48%, and then it goes to 0% to create that kind of look, all right? Similarly, over here on the Galaxian text, I was kind of using it as a transitional effect. Same thing. Let's go ahead and select this. Here I'm using a directional blur, but I'm going kind of both directions. I start with a small directional blur, adjusting blur length, and then I just increase that blur length to transition to the next clip, to transition to the next cut. All right? Wind that back. Okay? And it's all done on screen, very simply. And again, when you click on the Essential Graphics layer that you've made here, right, you can change the color. So if we didn't want it in white, we could change it to red or blue or green. You can add stroke or drop shadow to these if you want to do that. Again, via the appearance panel here, you can change the text. You can add master styles. You could, again, add additional images, ping files, JPEGs, or even video. And then all of these could theoretically be saved and exported as a template that you could reuse. So what's cool about social publishing, social creation is, especially if you're building things that you use frequently, you might have your intro graphic, your intro text and title. You could create that animation, that text animation, as a motion graphics template. Where do those templates show up? Well, they can show up locally here inside of the Essential Graphics panel, and you've got different options, different preset ones here. So you can see, like, we actually have some social media graphics that you can actually use here. So here's one. This is like we've got like, share, and subscribe. So let's just choose this share one for a moment. I'll drag this in. Now this is telling me that I'm missing a font here from Typekit. So this is also pretty awesome because Typekit fonts, again, as a CC member, You've got thousands and thousands of fonts that you have license to use. If you're missing one, someone creates something for you, just say, okay, go ahead and get it. Sync fonts, and it does it. It just happens like that. Let's turn off this Galaxian text here. And now there's that motion graphics share template. And what's cool about this, now this one wasn't even designed to be used vertically, but look at how awesome it looks because it was center created, right? Like it just works. And they've also got, there's like nothing fancy on here. So you can see it's actually a video clip. So that animation of those circles, that's an actual video clip where we've modified the scale over time. And then what else has it got? Oh, and it's got some Gaussian blur applied here, okay? And the transform effect as well, okay? So your presets can be contained locally in the Essential Graphics panel when you make them, or if we go up to our CC libraries, scroll these down, here are some motion graphics templates that I've built, okay? Now, again, these are going to work on any footage, but of course, they may or may not conform to the frame size that you're working in. So all of these were created sort of as 1080. Let me go ahead and grab this one. Let's just see what this one is. All right, I'll turn off the share one here. Now again, because a lot of these were sort of center created, I really like that directional blur. This kind of gives you an idea. Now this was built, I think, for 4K, which is why it's sized so small. But this is where, of course, you also have the option here to rescale, to reformat, to change, to modify. You can do all kinds of things to this. So you've got a lot of flexibility here with how you format and align your text. Again, I can do the same thing to the shape layer here. All right, or maybe I'll keep that as it is and just change this text here for assistant director. All right, scale that up like this. Whoops, not like that. Like that, okay. All the animation is retained, by the way. I just changed the scale. You're starting to see how this works? And I'm telling you, vertically, when you start creating in the vertical frame, gosh, it just starts to make sense. And honestly, it looks good on your phone. All right? So that's a little bit on vertical creation. So now that we've done text animation, creating motion graphics templates, which you can access via CC libraries, drag them right in. You can modify them. You can save them to the Essential Graphics panel. You can build them in After Effects with even more animation, modify them in Premiere without going to After Effects. Again, you can watch. I invite you to go to the Creative Cloud YouTube channel to see really all about Essential Graphics and how that stuff works. Now let's talk about kind of getting this stuff out, exporting and doing even more with this and adding things like watermarks if you didn't already have one. So let me go ahead and let me turn that off actually for the purpose of this. And let's go to File, Export, Media. All right. Oh, and I left my This Is Text on there. That's fine. Okay. So here in export settings, now this is how we're going to do some of our destination publishing today. Now you don't have Snapchat or Instagram in there just yet, but you do have quite a few places that you can go. You'll see here that you can go directly to Creative Cloud Storage, of course. Now, I point this one out because if you're creating videos for Instagram or Snapchat, well, we can't have you publish, we don't allow you to publish there yet directly. How do you have to get it to your device to be able to publish it to those platforms? So if you publish it to Creative Cloud, your storage, well, with the CC app on your phone, you can then download that video and then it goes to your camera roll and very easily upload that video to Instagram, to Snapchat. So it's not a direct path, but this is an awesome path, okay? So destination publishing number one, if you want to go to Snapchat or Instagram, publish it to Creative Cloud, okay? You can just show it where it's going and you'll be able to, again, it'll sync to your desktop, of course, and then you'll see it inside the app on your phone, assuming that you have those folders synced across your devices. This is a great way to do that, all right? So if you're creating edited stories, that's how you get it to those platforms. Go to Creative Cloud. Adobe Stock, Behance, Facebook, FTP, Twitter, Vimeo, and YouTube, you can all publish directly to those platforms. So in the case of something like this, as we mentioned before, now, this being vertical, regardless of where we're going, let's just talk about making the preset and how we modify things here, or how we add, first and foremost, things like a watermark. So where you're going to find the ability to add something like a watermark on your export is in the Effects tab here. And as I mentioned before too, before you even do anything else, if you're going to any social network, make sure you go H.264. This is the format that you're going to want to use. So we'll choose H.264. We're going to click on the Effects tab right here. And in the Effects tab, there's all kinds of things that you can do. Now, again, I covered this last week's episode, kind of what all this stuff does. One of them being that you can add looks, an overall look to everything. So if you actually wanted to do that, you can do that here. Again, I can scrub through my content. Let's say that we wanted to add sort of a particular lumetri look to this to give it all kind of a different feeling. Whoops, no, I don't want to open one, sorry. I don't know why it keeps doing that. There we go. You can see I'm scrubbing through these here, and as I scrub through, it's just changing the look of my video overall, okay? So that's kind of neat. I don't know why that keeps happening, all right? So you can add a look or a LUT directly on export, okay? Well, let me go back here, because why am I not seeing all my videos? Oh, I turned the layers off. That was dumb. There we go, okay. Back to export media. Okay, so let's twirl this up. Let's twirl up SDR conform, image overlay. So here is where you can add your watermark, okay, your brand. You saw that I had my little JP, Jace's Places logo on top of that video. Anything that I upload to Snapchat or to Twitter or to wherever, I want my branding on there. You can apply that easily in the sequence itself or on export. So if you go ahead and choose one, I recommend creating one as a simple ping with transparency. Here I have my JP logo exported out of Photoshop. All right, it appears here. Now again, I can reposition this wherever I want. So let's just move it over here. Oh, I moved it over too much. Sorry, it was a little delayed there. All right, and let's go ahead and scrub this down. You've also got the ability to adjust the size and the opacity. Now, once you do this, what's also cool is that you can save this as a preset. And I cover that whole workflow again in last week's episode 6. Again, we can adjust opacity here. So maybe it's just like 40% so that the video underneath kind of bleeds through. But now this logo will persist over the entire piece of footage wherever we are, okay? So that's really cool, really nice, really easy to do using image overlay, all right? Simple. Now, one of the other things that I wanted to showcase to you here that I think is very useful for social publishing is this. Now, this sounds technical, loudness normalization. Couple things involved here. First of all, this was designed for really to standardize loudness for broadcast delivery. So anyone who watches any kind of network television, or even again, like even things like, you know, Netflix, Hulu, those kinds of networks, we're trying to standardize loudness these days because one of the most hateful things, of course, is when you're watching something and you go from very loud to very quiet, or the opposite. What this does is this allows you to conform to different broadcast standards for loudness. Now, while those standards don't really apply to your social networks, what this can also do, though, is just act as a way to make everything louder. Now, I say this with, you know, in the words of Spider-Man's uncle, you know, with great power comes great responsibility, right? A target loudness of -24 LUFS. LUFS stands for loudness units relative to full scale. That's super nerdy. No one cares about that. That target loudness for Snapchat, Facebook, YouTube, that's going to be a bit low. All right. So I would recommend anywhere from, say, -6 to -12 LUFS. Okay. I'm just going to go somewhere right like -8. Okay. That's going to take all the audio in your video. It's going to make it super loud. Now, if you've already got very loud music, very loud audio, a target loudness of -8 might be way too hot. So you're going to have to play around with this to see what really works for you. my point of this is that if you found that your videos, when you upload them, are too quiet, this is a way to kind of level everything so that the way that people, it appears, the way that they hear it, they perceive it, is kind of uniformly loud. And for that, I'd recommend -16 to -12. -16 is kind of a standard for podcast listening. It's pretty good for social as well. So if you just set the target loudness to -16 and do an export, you're going to notice that everything's kind of just a bit louder, a bit more glued together. Play around with it a bit. Try going up to -2. It will be too loud, too crunch. It's going to sound terrible. You'll get people's attention. Don't do that. I don't recommend that. But like I said, anywhere from like -8, really -8 to -16 is kind of a comfortable place to be for loudness normalization for social, okay? So just keep that in mind. It's something you can do. I don't say do it, but try it. And of course, you can listen to it before you upload, all right? Loudness normalization. Okay, now having shown that, again, when you're ready to publish directly, all you have to do is select the checkbox here, all right, and say, I want this to go to YouTube. Here's where, again, you can put in your privacy, you can put in the tags, you can put in your description, all right, and then you can choose to delete the file or just upload it. You can queue it or export it here very easily. Export will be modal, meaning you'll export it in this dialog. You will not leave this dialog. It's going to use all your system's resources to do a much faster export. If you queue, which I highly recommend, this is going to send things to the Media Encoder so that you can export later, all right? Now, one of the things to keep in mind when you're publishing, of course, is, like we said before, what are the attributes of this video, and how do I create a preset that has all those attributes? Well, what you'll see is I'm on custom. It was probably originally on match source. There's some intelligence to the Media Encoder because it looked at my sequence, which was 1080 by 1920 at 30 with 48K, and it created an output in H.264 that's the same, 1080, 1920, 30, progressive, and it even set some targets for my bit rate. Now, again, you can go online and see some of the specs here. As I told you, with regard to Instagram, the max width of whatever you're working on has to be 1080 anyway. So if you wanted to change those attributes, now again, for vertical, it's fine. It's perfect here. If you want to change those in any particular way, though, you can uncheck that box and you can change the width and height there, all right? Now, if I go to something else, let me go to one of the square ones here. This one is square. So once again, by default, match source, 1080 by 1080. It took the same frame rate. It's progressive. It uses a VBR1 pass, target of 10, max of 12 megabits, AAC 320, 48K. Now, again, as I mentioned, if we wanted to change the attributes of this, let's say we wanted to export this 600, I can simply type in 600. It automatically goes 600 by 600. Now, this is exactly what Instagram wants for square. The thing is, when you upload this, it's going to recompress it again. They're going to create their own version. So you don't buy anything by creating a 600 by 600 export. I'd recommend keeping it 1080. They're going to re-encode it anyway. This is just going to give you a better chance at making the quality a little bit better, all right? As mentioned, you can change any of the attributes by unchecking these boxes. The reason everything's grayed out is because it was using that match source option. Now, something else I found online, which you can find too, and again, I found some differing things regarding bitrate settings. Now, they're going to re-encode anyway. Ultimately, evidently, they're going to display their content between 3.5 megabits and 5.5 megabits. So in theory, you could create a preset that's 5.5 for the target, or sorry, 5.5 for the max and 3.5 for the target. Okay? If you wanted to. To be honest, you know, maybe just leave it at the match source high bitrate settings and let Instagram, they're going to re-encode anyway. And evidently they do archive a 1080 version, but what is displayed is 600 pixels wide, okay? Now, if you wanted to keep this, let's go up to the Save Preset option here, and we'll call this Instagram Square 1080. Oh, but hold on, before I do that, audio. This was something else. I mentioned this before. Instagram wanted 44.1 from a couple of the blogs that I read. So here's where you can choose that. Now remember, the sequence itself was 48, because that's what this content was. So I'm editing in the native sample rate of the content, but I'm going to have it convert to 44 for delivery. All right. Similarly, I believe Facebook wants this too. So here's where you can change that under the audio tab. 44.1, 320. I think they actually request 192 kilobits for their sample, for their bit rate for AAC. There's where you can change that. So now if we go into save the preset, Instagram, square, 1080, 44.1, watermark, and I want to save the effects settings. Remember, the watermark was contained here in effects, and I want to save the publish settings. Now, again, that's not going to Instagram, but maybe I saved it going to Creative Cloud, or if I were doing a YouTube one, it's going to save whatever we do here as part of that preset. And now I can reuse this preset every time I export. All right, my friends, that is all the time we have. As promised, I did not keep it to an hour. Thank you so much for joining me. My name is Jason Levine. It was great to have all of you here. We will see you again next time. Thanks, everybody. Take care. Bye-bye.